Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Find and Follow podcast, where we are all about helping you find and follow Jesus in your everyday life.
Jesus.
Jesus.
Really emphasize that.
Sometimes you just got to make it different.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the same a lot. So sometimes.
Jeez. Remember when we used to have a different intro and I didn't like it?
Yeah.
I think about every time you say this intro that I like, I think about the old one that I didn't like.
I feel like we've had a couple different intros.
Yeah.
That's all right. I might change this one.
You might add Jesus to it.
Jesus. It's probably because I was listening to Matthew 23 and the New Living Translation guy.
He emphasizes some stuff.
Pharisee. Oh, you hypocrites. He gets on them like with inflection. It's pretty intense.
Well, I interrupted your intro. I don't know if you got through all of it. Scott and Kyle here again on the podcast. Your hosts in the podcast HQ. Back at it again. Finish it up.
Was that your impression of me?
Yeah,
that was horrible.
Well, I got a head cold, so my voice that I would do for you is I can't do it today.
We got to put the sinus button on.
Put a filter on.
You got a little head cold. I got the seasonal allergies, so
a little nasally today. It's not the soundboard mix. We didn't crank up the high end or the
low end.
Yeah,
we got to
EQ it out.
Inflection a little bit different today, so you don't, so it doesn't get out of here and get like that.
So apologies.
No intro. I was just asking. Did you hear your Greek and Hebrew alphabet?
Yeah, threw that
intro
in there. Craig and I were talking about. I don't even know how we got on that alphabet.
You asked me as we were setting up. You asked me a question about something else. If I knew maybe the phonetic of something or the military.
Yep.
Something. And then it went to the Greek alphabet, and you know the song. So
I know that. Yeah.
Now, I do have to confess, I did do a little production value there. So I spliced it a little bit, but I also sped you up.
Oh,
just a fractional. You said it super fast, and I thought this would be even funnier if we sped it up. So when you go through it, I can't remember.
I can't not do it without thinking of the song. So half the time I want to sing the melody that I learned it, right?
It's the ABCs. Some of us still go, A, B, C, E, F, G, R, S, T, L, N.
Yep.
Sometimes
R, S, T, L, N, E. Going Wheel of Fortune on us? Not the alphabet. Wheel of Fortune letters?
Just the Wordle.
Oh, yes.
Deep in the Wordle. So
I'm out.
Wyatt
I was in for 2 weeks.
I'm on a streak right now, 51 days.
So proud of you.
I'm so proud of me, too. I feel like I'm doing something.
Great job.
30 seconds of my life every day. Anywho, we're here. Craig, not here. We be present.
We be present.
So you weren't present last week. You were at the conference of the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel.
That's true.
100 years that we're a Foursquare Church, started by a lady, Amy Simple McPherson, 100 years ago officially.
Yeah.
Like before then, her journey to preach the gospel, get the good news out. And you think about that in the 1920s.
1923 in pretty much downtown Los Angeles. Heart of them built a beautiful temple down there. Had a radio station broadcasting and evangelizing, witnessing, and doing some really cool stuff and then she started a Bible college almost immediately to train and equip people to evangelize and share the good news. And so Life Pacific University, then Life Bible College, then Life Pacific College, started that same year. So she started a church, a denomination, and a Bible college pretty much in a year.
I guess I didn't know she started the college.
Yep.
So that's cool.
Started out of Angelus Temple there, and it was really more of an evangelistic. LIFE stands for the Lighthouse for International Foursquare Evangelism. It's an acronym.
Okay. I knew it was an acronym. I wouldn't be able to tell you what it was.
So it was really an evangelistic training center to teach people the gospel and the Bible and how to evangelize and share the good news globally. And she was really passionate about sending people out to, share good news. And
It's super cool. I mean, you think about it in our history, women doing amazing work. It wasn't socially acceptable. Like they should have been, and some were. But too much junk going on with
she was almost a celebrity. I mean, it was a big deal what she was doing and what she was accomplishing in the 20s for a woman, for a preacher, for a pastor.
And not married? Question mark. Was she married when she got? I can't remember. the details.
Yeah, I don't.
I only bring it up because it does make a difference. Like women technically couldn't own property in a lot of places in the 1800s, early 1900s. Like it was still a huge thing for her to do that today would be remarkable.
Yep.
And it's just sad that that's part of our story and our history when we're made in the image of God, male and female.
100%.
Not there's male and then there's a lesser than, which has been too often the case. It's the good news. Jesus has gone around the world. There's 100,000 Foursquare churches, I think.
Yeah,
man, I'm just making up stats left and right here. Trying to quite a few around the world. Lots of people found Jesus. Mission Church here because of her work she did 100 years ago, and then obviously all the others. It's big team effort, but so 100 years. It's our national or international conference, annual conference. Then it happened to be 100 years. Highlights, fun things, anything that stuck out. Speaker, connection.
Yeah, I mean the coolest thing is it's kind of the U.S. one. I mean they do them internationally and do different stuff, but it's international, but it's the U.S. base, and so almost 5,000 pastors and leaders from around the world gathered together in Anaheim, California, to worship together and to hear and to get encouragement and just to hear about. Again, this one was a little extra special to hear about all the things that have happened in 100 years. Kind of gives us a natural time to reflect on our origins and where we've come from and what we've been able to do. And I'm always just they do a really good job of just highlighting the global impact. So hearing some stories of, I mean, they highlighted like Japan and India and this stuff that's like you just don't think about. I mean, Japan is one of the hardest places in the world to reach for what they were saying from the Foursquare mission people that were talking. The kind of the joke is, or the maybe not the joke, maybe the sad truth is, Japan is where church planters go to die. I mean, it's just like it's so hard and you get burnt out. And so hearing some people. So one of the main session presenters was a Foursquare pastor in Japan and talking about his church and India and the outreach to unreached people groups and people all over the world. And that again, there's people sitting behind you who are speaking different languages and all of that kind of stuff. So that's always kind of humbling when you have that experience of, man, this is bigger than Spokane, Washington, and our little church, and in a cool way to see what God's doing internationally and nationally. And then the connection and network, hanging out with friends from college and earlier years, hanging out with my mentor and having dinner and stuff with him and his wife and his family. They call it Connection now because that's a huge part of it. It used to be called Foursquare Convention. They changed the name a little bit, and so it's the connection part is huge. The networking and hanging out, talking to people is always super cool.
Yeah, it's always those kind of experiences are humbling. They're a little mind blowing when you realize, oh, I'm part of something that's huge, and then you realize that's just still a fraction of the kingdom of God here on earth. Mm-hmm. And you think about that and try to get your brain around the size and scope of that, and potentially billions of Jesus followers on the planet today. And man, you're going, wow, what God's up to and what He's doing is way bigger than me.
Yep.
Which is healthy in a lot of ways. It gives us proper perspective.
Yeah.
And then you tagged on some fun, too.
Yeah, then we had to do a couple days in Disneyland.
I mean, you're across the street from Disneyland.
Literally across the street. We stayed in a hotel that was super close, and so we'd walk to the conference every day. And the backside of Disneyland right there, if any Disney fans, backside of actually Disney's California Adventure, there's the Incredicoaster. And you can hear people screaming on the coaster right
as
outside.
You're going in.
Yeah, as you're going into the conference. It's like, oh, there's the roller coaster, and you hear people screaming. I went to go grab coffee one day, and it was like, wee, right? And so
that's a fun one because it shoots you, right?
The start
like, it goes 0 to 55 or whatever instead of ratchet you up a thing.
Yep.
It's a launch.
Yep. So Lindsay and I went. This was the first connection that Lindsay's ever been to with me, which was fun. I've only ever been to the other one in Nashville. The last 2 years we didn't do them because 2 2 years during COVID, and then last year, Lindsay was 9 months pregnant, so we did not go.
Not advisable to get on an airplane when you're 9 months
and
pregnant.
I wasn't going to leave and go, hey, good luck. You might have the baby when I'm gone. That probably wouldn't have worked out well. So this was the first one we've been to together, so that was fun. So we brought Harper with us, and so traveled with a 1-year-old for the first time, and she did great. And I always said my wife loves Disneyland. You guys talked about it a little bit on the podcast. My wife and her family love Disneyland. I love Disneyland. It's good. I'm not to the extent of her. So I always told her, hey, we're not going to take Harper to Disneyland until she's like at least 3. Probably not even to like 4. Because I'm like, it's pointless. They're not going to remember it.
And you got to navigate the stroller and the naps and the diapers. You kind of think, let's be practical about it.
Yeah.
Get her out of us, for the most part, out of a stroller. Like, as an adult, at the end of the day of Disneyland, you're like, I need a stroller.
Oh, yeah,
but,
for sure.
It's a little more self-sufficient. But, here you are.
But then, they announced conference in Anaheim, literally right across the street from Disneyland, and we were going to go.
I mean, what do you do, not go?
Yeah, and so I'm like, we're not going to go next door to Disneyland and not go. So and she gets in for free, so we don't have to pay for her to go.
Oh, really? What's the free cut?
2.
2
and under are free. It's kind of like flights, right?
Yeah.
A kid under 2 doesn't. Yeah, lap child. So
now, you think they're going to check that at the gate? Like if you got a 2-year-old with 2 and 2 months, they're going to go birth certificate on you? Can you sneak a kid in that looks younger, probably, that's older? Yeah. Some of these kids look small, and you're like, yeah, still 2.
I don't know. Maybe.
I'm just trying to cheat the system.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I have a little
flights, you do have to bring a copy of the birth certificate.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Proof of identification is good there.
That you have
so highlights for like food front. Well, let's go like food front, ride front, or attraction.
Food front. So you guys talked about it on the podcast last. We did hit Dole Whip pretty hard. I normally don't do the Dole Whip. I indulged in the Dole Whip with my family this time, which is like I'm like, why not?
Yeah, because you're not usually a dessert person.
Yeah, so I'm normally like, we go through the line and they do it, and I was like, sure. I was kind of hungry, so
yeah, it's good.
Did the Dole Whip. I'm surprised my wife didn't get as many churros as she normally did, but she did do some churros.
Still as good as ever.
Yeah, I mean you can't go wrong with fried dough and cinnamon sugar. It's like every carnival food, right? Elephant ear funnel cake,
donuts. Yeah, it's the same.
We got some mini donuts. Maybe that's why she got some mini donuts that were cinnamon sugar. California Adventure, I think, has a little bit better food scene than Disney. I like some of their options. Right, we did a lot. We did get to go on a lot of the stuff we wanted to, which was great. It was obviously we went in with a different mindset. This wasn't a sun up to sundown, cram everything in that we want to do, because we, having been so many times, we got it nailed. Like we know what we're doing, and so we knew we got a 1-year-old. We're going to slow down a little bit, take our time, do some stuff. So we did a lot of the fun rides with her. Disneyland is cool. If you've ever been to, even like Silverwood or Six Flags or something like that, there's not a lot little kids can do. Disney does a great job of making rides that your whole family can go on. So she's, in your lap, but she rode dozens of rides. Winnie the Pooh, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland. It's a Small World.
Do you think she had a favorite? Does she have any attraction experience where she was more engaged?
She was looking around at everything. So I mean, she was just...
There's a lot of sound and lights and moving characters. Yeah. So, for sure.
So I think a lot of those, like Little Mermaid, Small World, again, kind of that whole thing. She did not like the Toy Story ride, which is a game, and it kind of jars you around a little bit. And you have to wear these 3D glasses to see. So I don't know what the experience would be like if you're not... She rode that one with Grandma and Grandpa, and
it's probably pretty bad.
Yeah,
you're just getting tossed around. You can't see anything.
Harlan said she just was trying to get out of the cart the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, get me out of here.
Yeah, and the movement is pretty jerky and quick. So it's kind of...
And Dumbo, kind of the same thing. She rode Dumbo, the Dumbo, fake Dumbo at Silverwood. And kind of the same thing, like wanting to get out. Like, I don't know about this.
It's a little more intense.
So she had fun. We had fun. We came, we saw, we conquered. And, it's a good time.
Did you do princess pictures or character pictures?
No. So, again...
Not a big thing?
Yeah, too. Like, Mickey would come by, like, she's just not old enough.
Yeah, but not big enough for you guys. To, like, we have to get a picture with her and a princess or something.
No. Okay. She watched the parade. The parade this year was super cool. And so that was fun for her, just like, Mickey dancing and stuff. And she would wave. They would wave at at
from
her.
a distance. They're always fun at a distance.
And so like wave.
It's like Santa Claus. Yeah, fun from a distance.
But like Mickey, like we literally walked into the park and Mickey and Pluto were like walking down like early morning. I was like, oh, and she didn't care. So it's like,
yeah,
we're not gonna go wait in line to have Mickey shake her hand or something. Next time,
all the cast members.
Yeah.
What do they call it? I mean, I've seen the signs. They call them cast members. Is that right? Help me out here, because the whole experience at Disneyland is for every employee. As soon as you exit the backstage, the employee area, there are signs like you are quote unquote on the stage. Like
yeah, you're in character. Yeah.
Yeah, you're whether you're sweeping the streets or you're a dressed up character or you're running a retail at a merchandise shop or you're an attendant in a line. Do they call them
cast members?
Cast members. Okay, I was thinking something else. So it's this whole show.
Oh yeah, and they got rules, and I tried to put a couple of them to the test because they're not supposed to point because pointing can be offensive, and specifically in other cultures, right?
Gotcha.
So I did genuinely need to know some directions a few times.
Where do I go?
Yeah.
And
hey,
you're pointing?
No, I just was like, hey, where's the nearest bathroom? I just want to see. They did great. 2 fingers is fine, or like 3 or the whole hand, but they can't point with a finger.
Wow.
And so both the people I tested out, I even tested one in downtown Disney, which is separate from the parks. And so,
but you're still
in character.
Member,
if you're still a cast member, and it was just a lady sweeping and doing trash, and I asked her.
Yeah, because it's a show. The whole thing is an experience, which is part of what makes Disney great. Is the line experience and the walking around is more fun. It's not just about the ride. Where you go to a Silverwood, and the line is like, yeah, just zigzag back and forth.
That's probably what Disney does the best. They call them their queues because it's not a line. You're being in queue for the ride.
Line sounds horrible.
The whole queue is an experience. So like the newer rides, the Rise of the Resistance, the new Star Wars ride is probably the best example because it's the newest ride. I guess Minnie and Mickey's Runaway Locomotive is the newest ride. Which
yeah,
we did
we're good.
But
we're not keeping up.
All those queues, especially the newer ones, that's a whole experience. Like you feel like you're on another planet in the Star Wars thing, seeing like memorabilia and different stuff, and they just do a good job. So as you're waiting, sometimes you're waiting a long time. You're already part of this ride experience. Probably the best, maybe the biggest highlight, the fireworks show this year.
Oh yeah,
super good. And they're really in on
California Adventure.
No, in
Disney
on Main Street. We stood in the middle. We waited in the middle of Main Street. Just literally stood in the middle of Main Street for like an hour.
Do they do that after the parade? I forget.
No, they don't have a night parade right now. They have a 3:30 and a 6 p.m.
Oh,
and then the fireworks are 9:30. But they're really big on image mapping, image projection. So they project this story on the castle, and then on Main Street, it's projected on all the buildings down Main Street. And so it's all these cartoons stuff throughout the years, and this amazing. The soundtrack is phenomenal, and then obviously one of the best fireworks shows you're ever going to see.
Totally immersive. You're surrounded by the scene and the show of projection and fireworks.
And we could see the fireworks from our hotel room.
Well, that's fun.
And so we watched them for like 3 nights. We were at a conference.
Did you hear them?
No. Or the fire. You couldn't hear the
music or anything?
No. So Lindsay and I were joking, like, what song do you think it is now? Yeah. And then we said afterwards, like, we were way off. Because, I mean, the music is just the way they mashed it up. Like, they mashed up a Hercules song with a Moana song. I mean, it's just, they did phenomenal. So that was super cool.
You singing along there?
No.
Okay.
I'm just taking it all in. Again, I'm looking to this shop on my right, the shop on my left, the castle in front, and fireworks up above. It's insane.
I think this is the last Disneyland thing.
Yeah, I was
that we
say,
should move along. The water light show, California
World
Adventure?
of Color. Yep.
World of Color. They still do that?
Yep. They have a new one.
Pretty fantastic.
Ryan, my mentor, Ryan and his wife did that the day before. We didn't. The day we did California Adventure, they did grad night. So they have these grad nights where, if you're graduating high school or college, the park is normally open till 10 p.m. California Adventure, Disneyland's open till midnight. They close California Adventure it's either 8 or 9, and then from then till 2 a.m. the grad
take over
to go hang out and do. And they have fun concerts and shows and stuff just for grad. So they didn't have it that night. But yeah, World of Color is super cool. We've seen it a bunch. And Fantasmic isn't going right now. It caught on fire. If you're a Disney fan, go watch the TikTok reels of the Maleficent dragon breathes fire. It's a super cool show.
Yeah.
Well, in the show, breathes fire, and it caught on fire and started melting.
Ooh.
Yeah, real bad.
Wow. Sketchy.
So they're not doing that one right now.
The lawyer said, we got to shut that down for a minute. Huh. So Disney, I'm going to segue here to Jesus.
Okay.
Because I think it's really similar what Jesus is getting after. We kind of touched on it last week. And again, you can jump in and add your thoughts on that whole conversation as well. But at Disney, it's this whole show. And it's people putting on these, having fun. And they're making a thing that's different than real life. And so Jesus is getting on the Pharisees, the leaders, the religious leaders, for living a life that is two parts. One is for the people. It's the show when you step out your door, have this big presentation, and teach the correct things. But then as you live life, totally different. I bet a lot of those cast members, when they are not in character at work, they're pointing with one finger. You know what I mean? Like, as a small example. And so Jesus is saying, don't have a faith, don't have a life that's all show.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the way you talk about it. I mean, if you've ever been to Disneyland or anything like that, right, and we stayed 2 blocks away, but it's just that level of detail that they put into that, like, I talked about it, like, there's no trash in Disneyland anywhere. I mean, they're so on top of it. Like, you literally see people sweeping up the littlest, wrapper,
yes,
anything. It's just ridiculous. You don't notice it until you're like, man. But then you walk a block away, and you're in, Southern California, you're in Anaheim, and there's a homeless guy on the corner, and there's a bunch of trash. And so it's almost a different world. My buddy joked the first time we went. He goes, "Look up, there's no smog." And I was like, it doesn't feel like there's. He's like, Disneyland has a bubble around it, right? And it almost feels like that. Like Disneyland has this
big fans,
magical bubble, and then as soon as you step out of it, you're like, oh, this is back to real life. And so, yeah, I think in our world sometimes we're really good, and the Pharisees, this is what Jesus calls them out. You have this fake magical bubble that you're like, oh, let's just live in Fantasyland, which is literally a part of Disneyland. That's like, it's a fantasy, it's not real, and it's an immersive experience, but like, how often in our real life are we, what you see is what you get, the inside and the outside match, and, walk 2 blocks that way, it's going to feel the exact same way as when you walk through these gates.
Yeah. Verse 2, Jesus starts laying into them. And if you haven't read enough of the Gospels, this can feel like it's not Jesus, because it's not the warm and cuddly and soft and kind of compassionate. He's really getting after them. But verse 2, he says this: the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees are the official interpreters of the law of Moses. So practice and obey whatever they tell you, but don't follow their example, for they don't practice what they teach. They crush people with unbearable religious demands and never lift a finger to ease the burden. Everything they do is for show. And he goes on and explains that. But everything they're doing to live is for the show. They're the religious cast member. And they crush people with unbearable religious demands. They added layers and layers and layers of their own laws and practices so that they would have a buffer to not disobey God's law. And so they're imposing, and I think that's one of the key things here, is they're imposing this extra hyper-religious lifestyle that is not what God's instruction was for the people. It's an addition to. And because you can kind of read this and go, what, are we not supposed to follow the way of God? And no, Jesus said, yeah, they're teaching correct things as far as from the law of Moses. So listen to their teaching and practice that. But don't look at their life and be an example. But yet that's life. It's, if I get sometimes frustrated about what my kids are doing, I got to look at the guy in the mirror and go, wait, where are they learning that from? What's happening? If they're on screens more than I want them to be, I got to look at the guy in the mirror and go, am I on screen? Are they just following my example more than what I'm teaching? Yeah. And I think we sometimes try to separate those too much. Go, hey, it doesn't matter what we teach. It's just how we live. Sometimes people aren't listening to your words; they're just watching your actions. No, it's both. They're looking to see if your words and your actions line up, and your actions do carry a lot of weight, but so do your words. So we can't just say words are meaningless and it's only action, and we can't just say it's all words and no action. It's both, and so that's what Jesus is making.
Yeah, and we had a conversation about this recently. I don't remember if it was on the podcast. You hear us say that a lot, but this idea of hypocrisy and people
Hypocrites
coming against people who are hypocrites, right? And in the church world, we hear this a lot, like, "Oh, I'm not coming to your church because it's just a bunch of hypocrites," or "Oh, those church people are hypocrites because they teach one thing and they live a different way." And yeah, I mean, it's a tricky tension and a tricky thing because we're all hypocritical at some time. Like we say things that. And, Paul said it in Romans that he has these ideals. Like, I wish I would live up to these things, and I teach these. But, there's times that I fail, and I'm not perfect. And I don't do these things. But I still want to talk about the ideals of who Jesus is and what Jesus is calling me to, understanding I'm not perfect. But then the other, side of that coin, the other shoe fit thing, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Pick an analogy and roll with it.
The other part of that is, my life should be lived in the way I love people says a lot about what I believe and how I live that out. So I can't just say, hey, you should love people and be good, and then just, not do that and not practice that.
Mm-hmm. The promise of Jesus is, he says this in John 13:34 and 5. He says, "A new commandment I give you, love one another as I have loved you." And so doing that, your love for one another will prove to the world and to people outside of following Jesus that you are my disciples. And I think that's a promise of God that we don't really put in the promise of God category. We kind of, I do, and I've had plenty of conversation, and I know us as humans and our tendencies, we think, I don't do it good enough. I'm not good enough, and I don't love people well enough. But Jesus is saying, no, we're qualified because we're in Christ. We know God, and we have the God who is love in us, flowing through us, and how we love one another, empowered by the Spirit of God, will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Yeah. So it's more about God and His love and His power than our moral excellence. Now, we got to work hard and do our part in that. We can't just be lazy and take a back seat and like, I'm doing nothing. But it will prove, no, I'm not perfect, but I'm also not so human that God can't use us. I think that's part of what Paul wrestles with in Romans and reconciles as well is, we're so human and so broken and so flawed that God can't use us. We're imperfect. No. He's not looking for perfect people. He's looking for people who are willing to be a follower.
And that I love the end of that because, again, I quote that and think that all the time. And Paul, if you cut out the context and you cut out the ending, Paul goes like, what a miserable situation. And he's like, where's the hope? Yeah. And if we end there, we're like, oh, that's a downer. But he's like, no, the hope is in Jesus. Thank the Lord that I am redeemed and free and have the power to do what God's, He has enabled me, equipped me, and given me what I need to do the right thing. And like, there's power in that and understanding that. And so, again, we could dive all the way deep into 23, but I think the theme is he keeps going. I love what he says later in the chapter. He calls them whitewashed tombs. Right? That's, again, to your example, like you're just polishing the outside and you look like you got it all together and, but Jesus changes us from the inside out. It's not the outside in.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you look like you got it all together. You got to change from the inside out. Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah, and you get to a point where you gotta, in such a healthy way, you gotta just not care what people think about you.
Yeah,
and that's what they're doing. Everything for show. They loved honor of people. They loved the praise of men. They loved people to see their good, quote unquote, good life and their good religious works, and so they made a point to emphasize over here, I'm doing a thing.
Yep.
Take note. They love status. They love titles. They love to exalt themselves and be over people instead of the kingdom of God is to be under people in the way of serving them. Yeah. So they had this whole exterior that we could get caught up to today, that we can be more concerned about what our faith looks like than what it actually is. Yep. And I don't want that. I don't want a faith that's disingenuous and I do way too much teaching, throughout the week and stuff, and it's like, man, my life better be. If you had to weigh it, I think better be bigger on the practice of it than the show of it and the teaching of it.
Yeah,
and as a teacher, that's a hard balance.
Yeah, again, and I don't think it's exclusive to us. I know that in our world, again, having a platform literally every week.
Do you want one now? You want me to get something?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a platform on this podcast. We literally stand elevated on Sunday morning, which doesn't help.
Do we got a platform here? If you're listening, we appreciate it.
Think so.
We thank you.
I listened to it last week. I was mowing the lawn, and I was like, what does Scott and Craig talk about?
Oh,
and
man.
you guys talked long enough that it literally
was the mow.
I mean, I didn't get all the edging and the blowing and cleanup in, but front, back, and side yard were done. Literally, it was almost like perfect. Oh, they're done. I'm done mowing.
So you want a longer podcast?
No, we're good. It was like an hour, which is normally pretty much it.
No, I felt like I primed the pump a couple questions to Craig, and he was just going.
I was listening. I wasn't listening on YouTube. I was like, did Scott leave? Is Scott still there? Craig's. There he is. I heard him. But right, so understanding this outside is the easier one. It's what people see. And I think it's the easier one to fake. Obviously, you can, like these Pharisees, pretend to have it all together, say the right things, know the law. For us, know Bible verses, know the theology, but not actually live it out and not actually have. I mean, I think it's sad when we see these moral failures and we see these churches and these pastors and these people who say they love Jesus, and it comes out that they're treating their family terribly, or they're doing stuff that's like, again, I think that we all need to be careful in understanding, like, what is our focus? Is it presenting a good, I got it all together, I know the right things, I can say the right things, I'm happy, we're good, my Facebook posts are nice, my Instagram looks good, and people like me and know me and want to be around me? Or is it, again, at the core, and I think this whitewashed tomb's like, on the inside, Jesus is saying you're dead and decaying. It's gross, and it's rotting away. Well, Jesus wants to change us from the inside out. He wants to get a hold of our heart and our character and who we are at the core, and that affects the outside, right? So I think a lot of times we do get it flipped. And so you're talking about the attention that we pay to it, but even the focus and the attention that we give to working on it, quote unquote. It's like, work on the outside, make sure people hear the right things, see the right things, like me, give me praise. I get to be more places. I get to do more things. I get to have more status. Jesus said, let me work here, and that stuff will come.
Yeah. Just to re-say what you just said, we get too concerned. We're trying to work outside to in transformation, and Jesus is about inside to out transformation.
Yeah.
And which is maybe the only true transformation is the inside to out.
Because again, Jesus says, if you don't do the inside, I mean, you can polish the outside, but it's not fixing anything. That's what he's talking about with these whitewashed tombs, right?
Then you'll be a hypocrite.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, we think we can go outside and then get in. No, you have to start in. Jesus says, I do the inward work. And so.
And again, I think we have had the hypocrite conversation on here, but it is so common, bears repeating, that Jesus is getting after them because he's calling them a hypocrite because they're intentionally living two different lives, and they're intentionally teaching others to live their exterior life and showing them this way to follow God, but yet intentionally they're living a secret life, and they're trying to teach other people. They're traveling the world to make disciples of themselves, and Jesus is getting after them on that. So that sounds a lot different than, I don't want to be a liar, but then occasionally like, oh, I lied. But then I correct it, I make amends, I tell the truth, and then I'm like, that's not my intention nor my heart.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between just being human and being a hypocrite.
Yeah, and owning it and understanding, again, this idea that they were presenting a level of perfection in themselves and not owning any failure, right? Not being like, yeah, hey, I don't have it all together. It would be like, literally, like, you have to listen to me because I'm the authority in this matter, and I have it all together, and I'm perfect, and you should be perfect like me. Yeah. And just like, that's hypocritical, and that's where I get frustrated when people talk to church people or our church or our leaders, like, you're hypocritical. Like, no, I mean, like, we're imperfect, and that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Right. I've never stood up and be like, hey, you should be perfect like I'm perfect and follow me because I'm a perfect guy and do everything the way I do it. I'm going to point people to Jesus, and I'm going to do my best to, hey, follow me while I follow Jesus. But that's a completely different thing than false teaching and lying and presenting a version of this whitewashed tomb where I just whitewash the outside. Don't let Jesus do the work on the inside. Don't actually care about being loved and loving people. That's a completely different conversation.
Yeah. Let us become like Jesus, not become like Scott or Kyle. And it's not just a Jesus thing either, the hypocrite.
Yeah.
And it's all walks of life in lots of arenas. I was just listening to a podcast with Dwight and Kevin from The Office, Rainn Wilson, I just blanked on his name.
Ooh. I was going to have Rainn for you, but...
That's Dwight. Kevin.
Paul?
No, it's right. I'd have to think about it. Oh,
Keep
man.
going.
Baumgartner.
Peter?
No. Anyways, so people are yelling that right now that know the show The Office. Anyways, Rainn Wilson was just sharing about his life and growing up is kind of a crazy... Brian. I knew that too. Brian Baumgartner?
Yeah, you had Baumgartner.
Yeah, okay. Anyways, Brian and Rainn talking, and Rainn just sharing his story, growing up in his crazy, messed up life and divorce and chaos. But then his parents are dad and stepmom, anyways, were Baha'i, which is a Baha'i faith, which is like in the last 150 years. And it's, hey, let's just grab bits and pieces from Christianity and Islam. And just,
Never heard of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only like probably a couple million people worldwide. Anyways, he was growing up. It's all about love. It's just this syncretism. I was going to try to sound real smart right there. Syncretism? Nope, that's not it either.
Keep trying.
Where you're grabbing bits and pieces of different religions and kind of make your own stew.
I don't even know what word you're looking for, man. Sorry, I can't help.
Anyways, but it's about love. It's about doing good, and love is the essence of it. But yet as a kid, he goes, I'm watching, here's this teaching. And he's like, people would come over to our house, and they would have a small group, and they would teach. My parents would teach, hey, we should love people, and they would do some sort of meditation and prayer. I think they do have a big, like, God. I don't know how they totally connect to who God is, but there's a God out there. But he's like, at the same time, during like small group, my parents would like fight and yell at each other, and my mom would like throw a plate and break stuff. And then his dad would turn and like, okay, everybody, let's just be like in harmony and peace. And they literally, he's just sharing this real openly. And their chaos in their household, but then it's like, yeah, let's get together as a group and like, yeah, love one another and like care for each other. And then there's yelling and screaming and chaos and breaking things. And he goes, it was just hypocritical. They would say and teach one thing and lived a whole different thing. Like, how is this teaching not affecting your life? Because you can say one thing, but I'm a kid watching you live this way. And the action, because behavior is a language. And what he's hearing from the behavior is going, well, that carries more weight than the once a week or a couple of times where you're teaching this other thing. So it's not just a Christianity thing, it's a human thing. It's like our behavior is a language. It's saying something. What is it saying? Does it match our words more often than not? Because that's our genuine heart. Jesus said from our heart is where the words come from, like what's in there. And you put enough pressure on the outside of life, stuff comes out. Like, where'd that come from? The inside. Just enough external pressure will make stuff pop out. And so whether it's faith, whether it's I trust God in the midst of a crazy circumstances, or whether it's like, chaos and destruction and like anger and resentment. So the hypocrite is not just a Jesus thing. I was hearing him share his story with Brian. Brian's a pretty good golfer.
He is.
Yeah. Anyways, we don't need to get on that topic too much. But verse 28, you kept hitting the tombs section. It's kind of that right at the end there of that. He says, in the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you're full of hypocrisy and wickedness. And it's the thing that only God can do is look on the inside. We judge the outside, and God looks at the inside. One of the things that I find is a little bit tricky is I want Jesus to do an inside to outside transformation in me, And I do want that for other people. I sometimes have a hard time when I'm helping disciple others and in their lives. I can only see the outside. And sometimes I get frustrated because I want some more outside transformation, and I get too outside focus versus inside focus. So, Pastor Kyle, help me with that.
I
like,
mean,
how do I?
It's hard because again, there should be a correlation, right? And again, all of the things that you talk about, that when we abide in Jesus, there should be fruit in our lives. When we trust the Holy Spirit, there should be these things that appear outwardly. If we're letting God work in us, out of the heart, our mouth should speak. And so, compassion and kindness and love, it should be doing. So, it's just, I hear you. For us, it's always like, well, we just want to measure what's going on outside. Like, show me those results, because there is such a correlation there, and there should be. I mean, if Jesus has control of your life, he should have control of your tongue. He should have control of your finances. He should have control of the way you raise your kids and the way you treat people and the way you talk about people.
Your attitude, your anger, your all that.
All of that. And so, but it's hard for us because I can't point to your heart. I can speak to your heart, but only through the power of the Holy Spirit
you
in
could
me.
point if you had 3 or 4 fingers, that'd be fine.
Not one.
Not one.
That's disrespectful. That's tricky. I mean,
yeah. James, the brother of Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? He writes a lot about that.
Yep.
We'll think about hey, you can't just say you got faith and no work proving it in your everyday life. You can't just say one thing and live a different life. And you're living a different life goes with your saying, like, they go together. It's not either or. Why do you, just zoom out a little bit. Why do you think he so much, like, taught that and emphasized that? Because he lived with Jesus.
Yeah.
He saw Jesus every single day. And so he saw him live it and teach it and live it in the most craziest of circumstances, not growing up, but public ministry, where he's getting, hunted down and people trying to kill him and mobs and craziness. And he's watching him respond and react to that in a perfect way. And so he goes, we should live like Jesus, because Jesus, I saw him. Like, we had bunk beds. He's like, he was on the top, I was on the bottom. We lived life together, and I saw him live this out perfectly. He's not about the show for me.
Jesus had the bottom bunk. The older brother always gets picked. And who picks the top?
You don't want the top?
Oh, I hated the top.
Really?
You like the top?
I go back and forth. We'd switch it up.
Luckily my roommates in college, we had bunk beds in California. They were giant earthquake-proof ones. And luckily my roommates liked the top, because I was like, I'm not doing the top.
We'd sometimes break them down and go floor, and then the top be on the floor, but it was tall enough that it created space.
We had cool ones that could, so we did an L, right? You could do the L.
Okay,
and then you could do, so we had different things. I don't remember as a kid if I was top or bottom.
We had, like, you walk in the door, and then on the right and the left were short little walls, but it created the closets, and they were open-ended closets, so no doors. So we'd sometimes shove the bunk beds into the closet and then, like, split the other closet, so you could get like a cave kind of going. So that way you could hang like a blanket. Some of the guys would go to bed earlier or whatever. With my buddy Mario, felt like he had one. So then you could have all the lights on in the room, and he could have his little cave. Now, I don't know if you can breathe in there, but it was just dark, and he could sleep.
Wow.
Yeah, things you got to navigate living together. But anyways,
Jesus had the bottom bunk for sure. But yeah, I thought the exact same thing as we were talking through that. Like, yeah, James has, and some people use that to be like, hey, you have to work your way to salvation, right? We misunderstand that, and that's not James's. I think it's really easy to actually read through James with common sense and see that's not what James is talking about. But what he is talking about is when your dad likes to talk about a lot, like actually born again. When you have this born again experience with Jesus, it transforms your life from the inside out, and the outward should be affected. The way you talk to people, James talks a lot about your tongue, the power of your words. You should be building people up. You should be using the power of your words for good. And if Jesus is changing you from the inside, out of the overflow of your heart, your words should speak. And it's not just like a don't have a potty mouth conversation. It's a understanding that, like, the Holy Spirit working in your life, Jesus transforming your heart should affect the way you treat people, should affect the way you talk about things. You should have a joy, and you should have a peace, and it should overflow out of you, out of your words. You should have, you should have peace in the midst of trials, all these types of things. And so it should correlate in your life. And James is like, if it doesn't, like, check your heart. Like, were you really born again? Are you actually living with Jesus at the center of your life, or not?
Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful today as you're thinking about your outward life, your inward life, and putting more energy and effort for all of us on letting God transform us from the inside out as we follow Him and not get too hung up and focus on the exterior stuff, but aware of it. But man, if you don't like something on the outside, put the energy and effort on the inside, and it'll transform you.
Yeah, and just the last little thought on that, because I think that might be a little ambiguous. Like, how do I do that? I think the really simple way we say it around here is you just got to connect personally with Jesus, and it's got to be something daily. You got to be spending time with Him. If you want Him to do the work, set some time aside, get in the Word, talk to Him, open up your life to Him, let Him do that work. If you're not setting aside time to do that, you're busy with other stuff, man, if you want Him to change your inside, give Him some time. Connect personally with Him daily, and watch what He does.
Yeah. Favorite office moment we got on?
I don't know, man. That's
I love when Dwight and Jim would do pranks.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of good
each other.
Jim pranks.
Oh,
I was watching the other day the early season, the basketball episode where they
take
challenged
on
the warehouse
guys.
That's a great episode.
Yeah, that is good.
Vintage Michael, where he's just so bad. So good.
Man. I mean, there's some, we got to land the plane here, but there's some correlation there. Like Michael's character, the outside looking good as a manager, regional manager or whatever, but then on the inside, like different. He just wanted to be a different person, but show good. Like there's probably something there.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, what's your favorite Office episode if you're an Office watcher? Hopefully it's helpful for you today, and have a great week following Jesus. We'll see you on the next episode.